talk some wide receiver sleepers for the NFL draft next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm joined by Emory Hunt. And Emory, we are just a little over a week away from the NFL draft. It's almost here. We're going to know what the next crop of NFL superstars is going to look like. And obviously it's going to make a big impact for our fantasy teams. And you and I have talked over the past month or so about a lot of different types of sleepers and different guys to get to know over the course of this process. And today we're talking about wide receivers. And, this is a big one because obviously it's a passing league now, and there's a lot of opportunities. Every team's running 3-4 wide receiver sets every snap. There's a lot of opportunities for guys to get on the field. And, Amon-Ra St. Brown is kind of the outlier of all outliers in terms of being a day 3 pick who's emerged really as a fantasy superstar, a top 12 guy. But, you look over the past couple of years, you got guys like Darnell Mooney, Gabriel Davis, who have emerged, outside of the top 100. So we'll get to some guys who are likely going to go outside of the top 100 who can make an impact for fantasy from this year's class. But I wanted to start with just, maybe one or two guys who could surprise and end up being, day 2 picks in this draft that we should keep an eye out for.
Oh, there are two guys. Number one, he's been making the rounds around social media, the discussion, but he's warranted of that, is Jonathan Mingo of Ole Miss. He's someone that can play inside or out. Kind of is built like Deebo Samuel, kind of gives you that A.J. Brown type of vibe, a guy that's a big physical inside presence, could be a slot receiver, could be a Z, could be someone that some teams see as the number one as an X, but he's been doing a really good job. People are now starting to get caught up to his tape. And the other one was Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State. I love the fact that he goes up and snatches the ball out of the air. He's a big time above the rim guy, but does a lot of work underneath as a bigger outside wide receiver.
Yeah, so that'd be maybe your Gabe Davis type, the guy who, may not be a reliable weekly option in terms of racking up a bunch of yards, but if lands in the right spot, could get a bunch of touchdowns and end up being a very useful fantasy option. Let's talk some more about, more like those day 3 guys for us to keep an eye on. Give me some of those guys.
Jalen Marino Cropper out of Fresno State is a fantastic receiver. He is someone that plays fast in all directions. He's quick off the ball, able to settle down and find that soft spot in the zone. So he's someone that you can see on day 3 getting an opportunity to get onto a roster, probably in that 4th or 5th round area, and help out. Also, maybe he can go in day 2, but I think medicals could potentially push him in early day 3. And that's Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee. He's a big physical wide receiver. Loves how he's able to stack and track the football deeper down the field. Could be one of those guys like an Amon-Ra St. Brown that could be a number 1 for a team. And I love to go to the Ivy League with Andre Iosivas because of what he does as a receiver. Can play inside or outside. He's a big, tall guy at 6'3", 215, but is one of the faster and more dynamic athletes in the draft class.
Yeah, you mentioned Cedric Tillman. He's graduating as a senior coming into the draft. How much does the age of a player as a prospect matter to you when you're projecting forward into the NFL?
Not necessarily at receiver. Maybe at certain positions, the age may factor in, but for him, it's all about the medicals. And guys are able to play longer. Receivers are playing as long as quarterbacks. They're not playing as long as Jerry Rice did or Tim Brown did, but sure, they're up there. So I do feel like Tillman is about checking off those medicals and making sure he's going to be good to go, because his age doesn't particularly matter to me, especially now that everyone coming to this draft is about to be 24, 25 years old.
Yeah, does that matter at all as far as like when you're looking at this draft and guys being 23, 24, 25, is that something where, looking ahead from a dynasty perspective in fantasy, when we're thinking, 4 or 5 years down the road, does that suggest that maybe this class might not have quite as much upside as your typical rookie class at wide receiver?
Right. That means the ceiling is very low for these guys because of the age and how many miles they have on them or how many games they played in college. Plus, everyone is always looking toward the next class. And as we get back to normal, that younger class will look more and more attractive. So the roof for these guys is right at the top for a few of these prospects.
Yeah, I feel like this happens every year where, it's always like, well, this class has some warts, but next year's class, I feel like there's a little bit of a mystery box aspect to it where, we've put the guys in this year's class under a microscope, and by the time we go through that process next year, we'll probably find some flaws for those guys too. That's going to do it for FFT and 5. For more NFL draft coverage, make sure you check out Emory's football game plan draft guide, footballgameplan.com/2023 draft guide. Emory will have you back next week to finish off previewing the NFL draft. We'll see you then.